Good evening. I'll call to order the Board of Education regular meeting for Monday, June 9th, 2025. Kristen, would you provide a roll call, please?
Yep, Bridget? Here. Tracy?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Ann?
Here.
And Aaron.
Here. I'll verify that we have quorum present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Eric, would you read the school board mission statement, please?
Yes, working together to ensure high levels of learning for all.
Thank you. Kristen, was public notice given?
Public notice was given to the requesting news media. The agenda was posted in school district buildings and on the district website.
Thank you. Are there any revisions to tonight's agenda?
We would like you to consider moving number 18 after number 9.
I would move that we approve the published agenda with moving agenda item 18 to after agenda item 9.
Second.
Motion by Ann, seconded by Brian to approve the published agenda with the following revision, moving item 18 to follow item 9. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We have no request for public input for tonight's published agenda, and we'll move into our first recognition item and only donations. Janet.
We have a number of donations to recognize tonight. $1,288.48 from the Onalaska American Legion for supplies for the On-Ability program. $1,925.14 from Office Depot's School Supply Drive program for supplies for Northern Hills Elementary. $500 from Smith's Bike Shop toward the Claude Deck grant for bikes and helmets for Irving Perch's All Kids Bike program. Sandwiches and coupons for district staff from Chick-fil-A Onalaska. And then $250 from Keys Architecture for Onalaska High School English 9 classes. And lastly, $637.59 from the Eagle Bluff Elementary PTO for recess equipment at Eagle Bluff.
Thank you. I think it's always so interesting and just very generous how various organizations and individuals choose to support our mission and recognize the work that's done here in the district. So thank you to all those donations. I will move into now item number 18, and we'll turn to Kelly McMahon for a review on the 2025-26 pre-kindergarten program contract and partners.
Hi, everyone. I'll be referencing enclosure 18 titled Pre-K. On the front, the summary of important updates, I'm just going to highlight 3 of them. In section 4B, the curriculum and assessment section, we updated some language there. We had a curriculum committee of instructional coaches, directors at some of our partner sites, myself, some of our pre-K teachers, all worked together last summer to create a, we call it a pre-K playbook, but it really just highlights what we believe are best practices for pre-K instruction, just to bring some cohesion between our community partner sites and our center or building sites, and just the type of instruction we're offering there. So it's bringing some cohesion there and just a really good collaborative project. But so we updated that language to add that in there, that we should all be following the playbook. And then in section 5A, the funding, after a conversation with our pre-K site directors at our partner sites, it came to my attention that we as a district are the ones who require parent-teacher conferences to be in person. So we are adding in a little extra reimbursement pay from us so that they can pay their pre-K teachers the same pre-K teacher rate for all of their parent-teacher conferences that they do for all of the students that are enrolled with us. So It was 1 hour last year, but they do 20 minutes per student, and some of the sites have up to 18 students, so 1 hour didn't seem to be enough to kind of make sure that we're reimbursing enough, so then our pre-K teachers at the sites get paid that higher rate during those parent-teacher conferences. So then, by adding that extra pay in section 6, we just outlined some requirements around what the parent-teacher conferences look like, or family-teacher conferences. So they need to be twice a year, 20 minutes per student. So we added just some language in there around what they look like, since we're paying more. And so those are kind of the 3 big things that we changed in the contract this year. Does anyone have questions at all for me? And then we're going to be offering up contracts to our partner sites, Children's Treehouse, First Lutheran, Gentle Lambs, North Star, and YMCA North. Christian Chapel closed their site, so they're not just their partner site, but their whole child care center's closed, so they were our 6th one that we had last year, so we're down 1 from last year.
Both a comment and a question.
Yes.
Comment, the thoughtfulness around the funding aspect and how you outlined the requirements around a parent-teacher conference. I think that's really smart in terms of providing guidance under that expanded funding. And then the second question is there any impact to just capacity at all with the other, that 6th site closing?
We have not seen much of an impact. Their site just had been, their site had been going down in numbers, so that was part of the reason that they closed, so that they didn't have a lot of students that they had to displace into other sites.
Any other questions for Kelly? This does require board approval.
I would move that we approve the 25-26 pre-K partner contract document and to enter into agreements with the following pre-K partners for 25-26 school year: Children's Treehouse, First Lutheran Preschool, Gentle Lambs, North Star Early Learning Center, and the YMCA North, as outlined in enclosure 18 and detailed by Kelly.
Second.
Motion by Ann, seconded by Tracy to approve the 2025-26 pre-kindergarten program contract and partners, including Children's Treehouse, First Lutheran Preschool, Gentle Lambs, North Star Early Learning Center, and YMCA North, as detailed in enclosure 18 and presented by Kelly. Are there any questions? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Kelly, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We will turn then back to informational discussion items with item number 10. And we'll start with
I'll start.
Charlie.
Just a couple of mentions here. First, just a thank to Kelly McMahon and others too, as we prepare for summer school, as we get things in order. I know we have to wrap up grades, and today the counselors were a great help as we connected with families for those that were going to qualify their credit recovery, to kind of get some kids caught up that didn't make it, in terms of the credit acquisition. So a lot of phone calls, a lot of connection with families. So thanks for that help in storing those grades and making that happen in short order, because next week due to the power being cut at the high school, we will hopefully kick off everything as scheduled on Monday there to get that going. And then in addition to that, certainly this past weekend with the state track and field and all that brings to our area. And I'm really proud of the Onalaska representation that we had, not just in how they did, but the sportsmanship and how they performed and represented our high school in many ways, in many positive ways. So very proud of their performances.
Thanks, Charlie. Ben?
Yeah. Over the middle school, we had a very busy but a great last week and end of the school year. We utilized our new gymnasium for our 8th grade recognition on Wednesday night, and even though the the gym is rated for a capacity of 900. We had standing room only, so it was a fantastic show of support for our 8th grade class. I thought things went really well. It was really amazing to compile all of their accomplishments over the last 3 years into one ceremony, and this the group of kids, they've accomplished a lot, and so well-deserved recognition. And then they got to cut loose a little bit with the dance, which for some reason I was struggling to figure out how to turn off all the lights. I should know how to do that. I think it was just not working, so they were a little grumpy about that, but it's all good. We had field trips on the second to last day, and those we were going all sorts of different places. But again, they were great. Our kids were great out in the community. Really represented us well. It was extremely hard for me to sit at Mount Olympus and do nothing for hours at a time. I'm not used to that. It was hard, but that's the kind of hard that I'll take, you know. And then the last day we had our fun run and just a lot of other great celebrations wrapping up the year. So a lot of great ways to end what was a challenging but overall a good year.
You didn't get to float in the wave pool
You
and
know,
supervise?
I went on the go-karts once.
Oh.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yep. At elementary, just spent some time at the end of the year with each of our teams looking through some preliminary data to kind of inform next steps with our goals. And we're looking forward to having all 3 elementary guiding coalitions at Irving Perch this summer at the end of July to plan for next year. And then, like Ben said, all of the end of the year fun activities. We had everything ranging from talent shows to student staff kickball games, mascot Olympics, everything that you can imagine. So it was a lot of fun. And then we also capped it off with our 5th grade clap out, which is always great on the last day of school. And then, like Charlie said, representing at the state track meet with Northern Hills and their extracurricular choir, 4th and 5th grade, singing the national anthem.
Which of the mascots won? I saw some of the pictures on Facebook.
So Rex won. He's our newest mascot. He's a dog, and so he was awarded champion because he was voted by the kids as the best mascot at the end of the year. So yeah.
Very cute. Thanks.
Okay, as an addition to our reports, Ann will provide an update on the CISA 4 annual meeting.
Thank you. I had the privilege of attending the CISA 4 annual meeting, just that. It's a once-a-year meeting with representation from all 26 school districts that are within our CISA 4 area. Of those 26 districts, then we have 11 representative on the Board of Control for CISA. So some of those elections were made at the meeting, some general business types of things. And then we had the opportunity to receive a presentation on a new program coming out of our CISA. For those of you who know or are familiar with CISAs, many around the state sort of find a niche or a special project or business model really in which they're going to specialize in, and it appears that our CISA is going to is jumping headfirst into this program. It's called Liftoffs, Learning Innovations for Teaching of Forward-Facing Students. It is a program that integrates AI, artificial intelligence, as a tier 1 instructional tool. It was interesting presentation. Of course, they kind of had to bottle the whole thing up into about 35, 40 minutes. So I left with lots of questions, but it was interesting information for sure. Entering into that world of AI is with caution, I believe. But right now, they had piloted this program in 10 smaller, more rural districts in our area. They, of course, had good things to say about it. It was much more personalized learning. It's a competency-based program. So lots of questions out of the audience about, where's the data and how do you see growth and how do you measure all of that kind of stuff that we weren't able to get real deep into. But I left with a brochure. I put my email in for, share information as it comes forward. But as I said, they haven't yet ventured into much bigger districts like ours. So my thought was a wait and see type of thing, but it's certainly very interesting. They seem to be grasping it. The team they have assembled at CISA, very reputable, very smart, happen to all 5 be women, who I've had the pleasure through my own work of attending some professional development about artificial intelligence from them. So it was very interesting. Following the presentation, we had, they seated us by county in the CISAs. So then I had some opportunity to have some really good conversation with the other schools in La Crosse County. So that was good, always a good opportunity to network with people on other boards. And then the meeting closed with Paul Fisher's annual report. Some of the things I just think it's important to highlight that CISA does without any separate funding. They're not receiving taxpayer dollars separate. They're completely supported by the districts within their region. They have developed an alternative pathway to licensing to address the teacher shortage. They have business services assistance, so in those instances where your business person is not available, they have some assistance programs there. They provide crisis prevention and intervention training to, I think they set up to 11 schools in our area. They provide itinerant services, and we here have approved those contracts, OT, PT, deaf and hard of hearing, vision teachers, those services that we need, but just have a small need for, not enough to hire our own people. Library media specialists, multilingual programs. They put together a para summit each year for our paraprofessionals to attend. Principal coaching, school improvement plans, multi-level systems of support that they're working in conjunction with DPI for. So they're doing lots and lots of good work there. Like I said, it really was a privilege to attend, represent Anna Laska at that meeting, and then also to kind of make those connections with our neighboring districts, which I always think is important. So appreciate the opportunity to go.
Yeah, and thank you for attending. I know that we couldn't do what we have set out as a mission, high levels of learning for all, without the support of the organization at CISA, for sure.
Charlie, the state track meet, I don't know if you've seen that, but Manny finished second at 4:02, which is unbelievable. But that video, my daughter tells me, on TikTok has over 30,000 likes, and that's because Manny finishes at 4:02, and the very first thing he does is run to that other guy, which had the energy at 4:02 to still go run. And he runs and he hugs him, so he almost knocks him over. He gives him such a big hug. So Manny's exceptional in a lot of ways. But I think that sportsmanship is almost typical. So the fact that it has 30,000 likes, and really the essence of it is finishing at that speed and then running over to hug the other guy. So just a really cool thing.
It is, yeah. If you get the opportunity to see I think it's like a 1.5-minute interview. I don't know what that
Oh, I didn't
was
see that.
specifically. I think, I don't know if it was Scott Emmerich or who it was, but it was from start to finish, it was just outstanding in the amount of credence and sportsmanship that he had for, it'll be his eventual teammate, who's a junior that he'll be as a Badger eventually, but nonetheless, so humble and kind in so many ways. That's just who Manny is. Not just in front of the camera, but that's who Manny is.
And the video that you're referencing is on our Facebook page.
Great.
Okay.
Ann, I had a question. On the CISA meeting, you mentioned they were smaller districts that have piloted the liftoff. What do you know offhand what any of them were?
Whitehall, Alma Center, it was actually, this whole thing was sort of initiated by, I'm not gonna, Mike, Bagley, am I saying that right? And Corey Kulig. Mike is from the Whitehall School District, Corey is from Oliva Strum.
Gotcha.
So those two districts piloted it really this last year. They talk about, right now the focus, the whole initiation of this was to address rural schools. So that's why things sort of kicked off over here in western Wisconsin. But they've had some inquiry from Green Bay, schools in that area. So it's very interesting, and I would be happy to talk about it more. I had a lot of questions about it, to be honest, and to be completely transparent. I had a lot of questions as a teacher myself. What does it look like? Is it curriculum? Is it grade level specific? Is it a whole school? Is it, so they didn't really talk about
Sure.
those types of bigger things. It was more like, this is what we're doing, and, I mean, it is really, it's really incredible. What AI can do is pretty fantastic. And the individualized learning piece of it is, of course, pretty fantastic. But I just had, and I will ask them questions. I'm not critical of it. I just, I think there's a lot to learn about it. And it is very specific that it's Tier 1 instruction. So how does that work, and how do they match that up with individual students? But,
Thank you.
yeah.
Did they go into like specific details how they're going to support like local school districts if they chose to implement that program?
You can purchase it from them. It's
Oh,
a purchase
okay.
program from them. So, yeah, they have lots of information on their website, how it's working, what they're doing. They come in and do training PD at the beginning. There's monthly support as you're going through, and then a follow-up at the, at the end of that year.
Is it
as
an
well.
ongoing thing, or is it kind of like you learn it and you implement it and then that's kind of it? Like, is it something that's ongoing that they?
Like from grade level to grade
Yeah,
level?
yeah,
or-
yeah.
Yeah, I believe it could be. Again, right now, it looks like you purchase it on an annual basis. And what they're doing is they're using an already established AI platform. And then each student, from what I understand, is working at their own pace, progressing through the competencies as they can, for a portion of the time that they're with the teacher. And then the other time allows the teacher to differentiate instruction based on what the teacher is seeing out of the work that the student is doing. So I think it's got very positive reviews from some of the districts that are doing it. It's still really new. And like I said, right now, and I see why the impact would be in those smaller areas that might have more difficult time getting teachers, and classrooms might be a little larger, but I think it's got really fantastic potential.
Yeah, it
for
just sounds
sure.
really interesting, but I can also
Yeah.
see why there'd be lots of questions.
Yeah, So I asked that, they ask, if you want more information, give us your email. So I did. So, yeah, I'll keep you posted if you have questions as we go.
Thank you, Anne.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's move into high school and middle school building updates. Start with Charlie.
Reference the images that are in front of you there. The top left-hand one, the south bathroom area that used to exist with just 2 bathrooms in south, but you can see there'll be some single-use bathrooms there and a hallway to some equipment areas which we didn't have access to as easily because we had to access them through the boys' locker room to get to them. So this creates a hallway along with some single-use bathrooms down at the end of the hallway. Sorry about that. And you can see the gym, locker room masonry progress there with some individual shower stalls. The abatement piece that started in the basement and then moved quickly up the hallways has gone really well. The crews have done an outstanding job and very efficient as they move through.
And
You can-
Charlie, just remind us,
Go ahead.
we saw refurbishment of a bunch of the classrooms downstairs last summer. The balance of those are getting done this summer?
Correct. Yep, that's where the abatement crew started, in that business world language area. And the demo happened really quickly down there with walls coming down. And one room that was kind of started, Bridget Hubbard's room, was already getting framed up. And you'll see in some pictures below that they're moving quickly in that area. And that was the first area of the abatement. And now they were upstairs and down the hallway. So things are moving along quite nicely. You can see the demo throughout the job site, lots of wires being pulled. I noticed as the year ended for the new camera system that's getting put in, along with other electrical as well. Moving to the next part, the field house bathroom, as I used to call it, has been gutted for a while now and will be ready for concrete. That will have to cure and set for about 30 days before they put everything in there, so that should be happening soon. And Aaron, as you had mentioned, the area that was first abated there, the lower level framing in that resource room is begun. So that's going along really well. The gymnasium wall demo has begun with the acoustical panels, and one of the main wall panels will be coming down in the main field house, so crews are working in there. And I forgot to mention earlier, thanks to Abby for allowing us to come over to Irving Perch this week as we've taken over. It's been great making our way over there since there's no power. But then, as you can see there, the demo was super fast but loud. But that's been looking to frame up the marketing and French rooms that wasn't touched yet in the basement, but is going up quickly.
Abby, any regrets?
No, this is day one and it went well. Okay, thank you.
Just a few days to go.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, so we are entering a new phase of our construction, which is this second summer here, and we've kind of just given over control during June, and Margaret Johnson and their subs have first dibs on everything. So this right here is kind of the next thing that we'll have finished is going to be choir and actually orchestra, as well as in this picture, and their associated like offices and practice rooms and everything like that. So the rest of our music department is the next piece that'll be finished, and so you can see they're starting the framing on that part. Something that they started today was we're adding a few windows in the main office to be able to see into that hallway. We realized there's a bit of a blind spot for our office staff, just from a safety piece, to be able to see everywhere, all the comings and goings of everything. So adding a few windows in there, that's what this work is. This is the old gym, and so you can see they got the color change to the Boys and Girls Club blue. And so the last step here pretty much is just to put in the new floor. And so for right now, they're still kind of staging some other equipment and materials for the rest of the project. This is that overhang that you see outside that new wing. And so they're pretty much done with that part underneath there, and there will be some bike racks and stuff there eventually by the time the next school year starts. This is some asbestos abatement. So they're pretty much done with that. This picture's from the last couple of weeks, but in all the old areas, once we got out 3 weeks ago, they started going to town, getting rid of the asbestos, and then they've done a whole bunch of other demolition since. Working on the outside walls as well. And then these next two pictures there's some work being done in the kitchen. The dishwashing station is being removed and replaced. And so that's work that they needed a couple week window where we weren't going to need the kitchen. And so that's why June, our summer school, is not at the middle school. So, but it'll be ready time for us to have summer school on site in July. Same thing, kitchen. So other than that, let me pull up my notes here. The only other thing I would say is that we got kicked out of our parking lot because they're adding on to it, and then they're putting the finishing touches on the parking lot, and so we'll have even more parking eventually, and so that's great. They're doing a lot of that site work outside, finishing the buildings and grounds type stuff, as well as the rest of the playground, and so there'll be some climbing equipment, some basketball courts, and a track as well outside in addition to the turf. So.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Well, Ben, driving by recently, it's an impressive-looking building from the outside.
It's great on the inside, too. Now, especially now that we're 90% of the way there, or 80, whatever it is. Yeah. Getting 8th grade was huge.
Well, Ben, we're going to stick with you for 8th grade promotion.
Great. So thank you for the opportunity. So we are pleased to share with the board that all 204 of our 8th grade students are being promoted to 9th grade. I already talked a little bit about, there's a lot of accomplishments that we shared during the recognition night last week, but we wish this class all the best as they enter high school.
Thank you. And first reading for the high school student handbook. Charlie.
I'm on this time, all right. Just our normal changes with a few additions. Obviously, the final exam schedules and dates to remember get updated every year, and then the final one there, the new school calendar has been added. But when I direct your attention to page 17, just some verbiage about the possibility of random testing at dances. And just to be clear, this isn't in reaction to student behavior being a concern or any way. This is just came about with some conversations with neighboring school districts on ways to better promote even more better decision-making with students. And we've had some preliminary conversation with administration and Officer Blair on how to incorporate that. It's more of an incentive-based thing. If students are coming, doing the right thing, an opportunity to maybe earn a prize or a gift card for some random pieces as they enter. Again, no details, no specific things out there, just lots of conversations with neighboring districts and some best practice things that other schools have been doing. And we're looking into that possibility as we look at our school dances next year. And then lastly, just update to which, we just brought to you not too long ago, the technology use and Chromebook insurance updates and clarifications for the things that we've updated. Questions on any of those?
Do you have like a separate policy or procedure for how you're going to possibly do random substance testing? Like,
Yeah, we don't. I mean, but like what some other schools have done, they've
like how they're gonna pull the kids aside or any of that jazz?
like random, whether it was if they had a bag of like poker chips, they would either win a prize or they would do a breathalyzer type of thing, and or an opportunity to get, a quick gift card or something to that sort. So it's completely random that
So
way.
it's more fun.
It's more fun than it is like
You want to get checked.
correct. Yep, for opportunities as you're coming in, and then opportunities to win prizes, and again, at the end of the day, continue to encourage those positive decisions that students are making.
That's actually a pretty cool way to go about doing this, because I think it takes a little bit of the stigma off of it too, because it's like, wow, I want to come and get a prize.
You could. There are opportunities for that. So that's our preliminary thinking. Again, just conversations at this point on how we might roll it out, but we've had lots of conversations with neighboring districts on what they've been doing.
Sure. It sounds very creative and very innovative, so thank you for sharing that.
Charlie, in terms of sequencing, would that policy, that underpinning policy Tracy mentions about implementation, would that be defined before the second reading and approval, given? Say again?
You said they weren't doing one.
Say that again.
I'm sorry, it says first reading and board consideration. Before there would be a second reading, would that policy that underpins execution be part of it?
As far as what it is, no, we don't have an exact plan on what that could be. Just the possibility of a random test at a dance would be something that we would ask for consideration. But we were not going to lay out like, this is what,
How it would work?
how it would work necessarily, because we're still just, again, we have knowledge of how other schools are doing it, but it was, as I explained to Tracy, that's how some have done that. But we're just, whether we, our early indications were positive in terms of the conversations we had Officer Blair and other principals in terms of what they've done, but that wasn't going to be included in the next one.
Okay.
Any other questions for Charlie? This is just on for first reading. Thanks, Charlie.
Yep.
Next up, Pillar 2 Strategic Plan, and we'll start with Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. You might be wondering why Pillar 2 before Pillar 1? Is there any order to these? And the date is in on Pillar 2. Pillar 1 you'll get to hear at the next board meeting on June 23rd. But the goal here, to foster meaningful relationships among family, school, and community to ensure access, representation, and voice. To foster, to encourage something that's good, right? So how are we doing in meeting this goal? That's the purpose of this presentation. And Fran and I, being the observer of this work for the last 7 months or so, can attest to the high level of thought, effort, and intentionality put into this cycle of continuous improvement. And thanks to Pillar champions, Lori and Fran, and our building principals and their guiding coalitions for their efforts to attain and or sustain the targets set for this goal. But as the team presents, I want to emphasize that the important work will be happening this summer. I think Abby mentioned the guiding coalitions. That's where the analysis of the data that we have right here goes to those teams, and they say, what will be our moves this next year to attain or sustain, with 2 questions being major drivers. And this came from our work with Studer. What did you learn that worked? Keep going with that. And what would better look like? Those are 2 big questions, and Guiding Coalition teams will be doing that. That's where the heart of this work lies. So thanks for letting us present on this, and Lori's going to kick it off. Thanks, Lori.
So, you'll notice that the slides in the presentation are the summary slides, but in the enclosure with the board agenda, there's 3 different enclosures, which includes all of the data and all of the information, the scorecard and the strategic plan and the updates that we've all made to that. So first, I'm going to talk about the family experience survey from a district summary perspective, and then we're going to scaffold that piece of information down to each of the buildings, and then it'll come back to me, and I will talk about the results of the community survey that we completed, which doesn't have the scaffolding to the building like the family experience survey does. So when we look at our family experience survey, this is the 2nd year in a row we've done it. We did move the timing of it. First year we did it was in the fall around parent-teacher conferences. This past year we did it in the spring around parent-teacher conferences, which we decided is a better time, especially for gathering the data now that we can use to develop goals and action steps going forward into next year. The survey itself has 17 questions, and all but 1 of them are on a rating scale of 1 to 4. 1 being strongly disagree and 4 being strongly agree. We don't have a medium because a lot of times people choose the 3 if there's a scale of 5, so that was kind of intentional. So when you see all of those data results, anything 3 or higher really indicates agree or strongly agree when you collect all of that data and put it together. Our response rate to this family experience survey this year was quite a bit lower than last year. We went from 718 total to 445 total. Again, there's 5 different surveys because they're specific to each of the buildings. We talked about, even though there were a lot of promotional efforts by our building principals to really get that information and have the families take the survey, our response rate was pretty significantly lower than last year. So that makes us wonder and question some things like, are we giving our parents too many surveys? Or maybe too often that there's not enough time in between for us to really make some impact on some changes. And so those are some of the things that we're pondering. We do ask some questions around demographics, and really what we're trying to get at in those questions, as Roger mentioned, part of our objective in Pillar 2 is equal access, representation, and voice. And so how do we know that we're hearing from all of our families and making sure that they have equal access, representation, and voice? There's a high correlation between students and the survey responders, which are typically parents or guardians, in ethnicity and in home language. And so those are the questions that we ask. And the results show that we're still not, our minority ethnic groups and our non-English speaking families are not being represented as much as our student demographic information would show us that we should have more in some of our ethnic minority groups responding. So then the efforts are, how do we make sure that we are reaching the families that aren't giving us the input that we're seeking? And how are we making sure that their experience and their engagement is also positive? Overall, when you look at like individual questions from a district perspective, most of the questions were not significantly different from last year. Most of them went up just a hair, but pretty solid, consistent results in the survey when you look at those individual questions. We do have one question that isn't a rating. It looks at what barriers are our families experiencing, and mental health, academic issues, and attendance at school continue to be the three top areas that families are saying they have struggled with in the past year. And if you think about, there have been many initiatives and programs and services and resources that we have talked about and put in place to address those. So it tells us a couple of things. I think we definitely have the right focus for some of those areas, but also there still continues to be some need. And so going forward, again, we think about how are we making sure we're addressing all of those needs. So there's two different measures on the district scorecard for the Family Experience Survey. One is a collective total of all of the questions, and then the other one, there's a high leverage question of recommending this school to a family that doesn't currently attend. Both of those measures went up, and if you go to the next slide, this shows what will be on or is on our district scorecard. Those two measures, the high leverage question and then the overall family experience survey, 2 years worth of data, with our target for the high leverage question being a 3.5 or higher. We surpassed that with a 3.53 out of 4. So that's a celebration. And then our family experience survey overall went up just a little bit, from a 3.36 to a 3.38, with our target goal at the end of the strategic plan to be, again, a 3.5 or higher. So good, positive things to celebrate in our district-wide family experience survey results. Any questions before we move on to more building level report outs?
I have just an overall question.
Sure.
Does anybody in the room know roughly how many families are enrolled? I'm just wondering what percentage that 445 is.
That's a great question. So we calculated that out last year, and to be totally transparent, I don't remember how we did it.
Okay.
But what we calculated it as our baseline was like 2,300 students.
Okay.
So Kelly, who was just here here, she has become kind of a master of Power School in the last year. Maybe not by choice, but she has. And so I asked her that. I said, could you figure out how many families we have so we could get like more of a percentage of our response rate? And there's a lot of calculation that goes into it. It's more complicated than you think, because families, sometimes students aren't connected in Power School.
Sure.
So it might be one family, but it might be counted twice, or some families aren't counted depending on the makeup of the family. Anyway, my point is she came up with about 1,800 families in her calculation. Well, we didn't lose 500 families over the year, so I decided not to put the percentage of response rate, because I'm hoping that maybe in our new student information system, we have a better way of being able to calculate that out. Power School doesn't give us a great way to do that, but that's great. We had the same thought process.
Well, and I will just add one thought before we move on. I have a elementary and a middle.
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize that those were two separate surveys.
Mm-hmm.
So we may have had situations too where we missed
Sure.
one or the other.
Sure. Yep, good point. Yep. Any other questions? Then I think Abby's going to present for all 3 elementary schools on the next slide.
Yep. So for all of our elementary schools, we had common goals to kind of move the needle around that high leverage question. One of the things that we focused on was that we had grade level gatherings to connect families and build community. So this came through on our survey, but also in our family focus groups that we held, that families really want to connect with one another. So in addition to school-wide events such as movie nights and reading nights and concerts and such, wanted to really hone in on grade level specific events. So we held those throughout the year, and then at the end of the year, in addition to the questions that we gave on the overall survey, we as elementary added a question around asking for feedback around those events, and then also looking at barriers that some families might have had in attending those school-wide grade-specific events. And so asked about, like, was the timing of the events a barrier? Before school, after school, weekends, and if families couldn't attend the events, we asked why. So it was kind of a spread, right? So just a lot of variety on when families are available, and some of the barriers that were most prevalent would be work, childcare, and then sometimes transportation or timing of the event. So just the work that we'll do this summer will be to kind of look through that survey data more specifically to think about how we can continue to bring families together, meet the needs of our families, and then also just, continue to bring them together with grade level specific events. So we did a lot of great things, just variety across the elementary schools. We had some donuts before school, some popsicles on the playground, some bounce houses, some sharing of projects, tech tips with Officer Blair and some of our grade levels. So just a lot of variety to bring families together and have them connect.
It's nice that you guys have a variety of times that you have things going on, because it's hard to capture everybody, but if you have some variety, hopefully more people can attend then.
Yeah, and we tried to cast a wide net and just get a lot of ideas from teachers at grade levels and other staff members as to what we might be able to offer. So,
I do have a quick question. Has, thinking about the survey for future, has there been any discussion about like the back to school school registration? Like, because people have to register, re-register their kids, like having that be one of like the mandatory things as they're clicking through. I don't know, I that's just kind of what I was thinking of. I mean, if they're new family, say like new family or whatever, but I don't know, that was just something I was just thinking of, all the back to school stuff.
And, this is all, when Roger mentioned like Pillar 2 is coming before Pillar 1, I think what we struggle with a little bit is like, when does data come in that you can use, not just in a reporting, but actually looking at goals and action steps? And that we switched the survey for families from the fall to the spring so that we have now this year's data to look at next year's goals and action steps. So like if we waited until August, we wouldn't have those results, because like our data retreats are in the summer to be able to set those goals and action steps. So it's all in a timing thing, but that's not a bad idea. I don't know if we could
capture more people.
Yep. And like I said, the building principals really promoted it. I mean, we put signs up and it's at parent-teacher conferences, and we do the Bright Arrow sent out to families. We put it on our Facebook pages. We do, it's there if people want to participate. But you just never know why they choose not to. I think Ben is next in middle school.
Yes. So you can see our score there on our high leverage question from last year and then this year. So improvement there. So we were pleased with that. Some of the things that were on our strategic plan for Pillar 2 that we feel, at least in some part, helped address this was we surveyed staff and families after our fall conferences. And we took that feedback into account. Our guiding coalition, we made a few changes to how we're doing conferences. One example is there's a lot of desire from staff and from parents of 6th grade to look a little bit different than 7th and 8th. It's first experience with middle school, a lot of things are different, and so that made a lot of sense. And so we made sure to, talk through what exactly that would look like. We have continued to evolve our weekly grade level emails to all families based upon parent feedback. Had a number of parents that had a lot of great things to say about that, just felt really in the know, and a few small suggestions here and there. We continue to evolve those emails throughout the year. And then we've kind of been keeping a running list of notes, things that we want to do next fall. We didn't get to do an open house this past year, but we'd like to do grade level specific open houses. There's certain things that 6th grade families need to know that 7th and 8th don't, right? There's certain things we'd like to share with 8th graders and their families to let them know, like, we're counting on you. Set a good example this year. And so that's something else that, we're continuing to try to constantly have that pulse and that feedback and refine our practices in this area.
Any questions for Ben?
Charlie,
All
I
right.
think.
Yep.
Oh, unless there's any
There it
questions
is.
for Ben.
you can see our score, went up a tick there as well. A couple of things, trying to find more touch points on how we can connect with families, not just through, the many events that we have, but most recently we started implementation of a 3-week grade check getting pushed out to families just to, certainly they have access to Power School at any moment and any time, but just to have that benchmark of knowing, okay, this is when it's coming, because sometimes there's more harm than good sometimes when you're checking Power School every single day. So I think having those benchmarks can be a positive way to kind of gauge and just, help create that connection with school if there is something out there. And then the second one there, we've had a couple of years now of some successful tours of post-secondary institutions, not just with kids, but with a parent or a family member that really engages in great conversation with students and universities and great questions about what's out there and what they don't know what's out there has been really, really positive. We've kind of coupled that around parent-teacher conferences, which has been a good thing. And again, even though it's a smaller group of parents and students, it's certainly not 900 students going there, but how do we use that model to expand to other areas? And we're continuing to kind of throw that question around our Guiding Coalition. Don't have that answer yet, but more things like that. How do we create those opportunities for parents and families to have those kind of high leverage conversations, which were really, really positive and rich in all of that. In addition, we kind of started some of the conversation with our last 2 Guiding Coalition meetings and looking at some of the data that's not specifically in here, but above, and like what is one thing that we can focus on to improve, because obviously we've all made the mistake of doing too many. And what is that one thing? We had a couple of conversations around a few of them, but that will be one of our goals this summer, is to narrow in on one again, and how do we move that needle for that one in particular. So some great conversations and some great data that we've been kicking around for a while.
Any questions for Charlie? So then I think the next slide is just bringing us back to the scorecard with the data that I had already shared for those 2 data points that we're looking at through the scorecard and our target again. So we've met the target. Hopefully we maintain it. The idea is that we maintain it, and then we're still moving in that direction for the total family experience survey results. So then I can go into the next few slides, couple slides, I think just have to do with the community engagement survey. So if you remember, this was completely separate. Last year, we sent it out through the community newsletter, and we had a pretty poor response. We had 42 people that responded. Still used the data and looked at the results, and we had a focus group meeting about it. This year, one thing we did differently, well, first of all, we had 274 results, which is much better. But what we did this time differently is we did blast it out to all of our families, which we didn't before. So they would have received it and could have participated in it through the community newsletter, but this time we made a specific bright arrow message for the community survey to all of the parents. So what's a little confusing is when you look at the results, yes, we have significantly higher results as far as response rate, but 93% of those were from parents. So we're still, what that tells us is we're still not hitting the community members that are not parents in asking for their input, their satisfaction in the questions around the district. And these questions, it's only 7 questions in this survey, and it's really big picture. It gives us some information about like academic performance of the district, and then it asks, are you satisfied with that, or with the fiscal responsibility? So kind of more big picture questions. So like I said, it's a little deceiving, but good information. One of the things that we ask is, how is it best to communicate? How would you prefer to be communicated information from the district? Email and text continue to be those highest preferred means of communication. And one thing that we did this year with the community newsletter, there was a link and a QR code, and the message said, if you would like to receive updates from the district, go on this link and put in your email address, and then we will send them to you. Because otherwise, we don't really have a means of communicating or sharing that information. First of all, they prefer email and text, but if we don't have their contact information. So I checked with Nick, our communications director, just last week, and he said we have 190 so far emails of community members. I don't know how many are parents, but community members that are now receiving regular updates from that email listserv on what the district activities are.
I was
So
curious
that's
about
good.
that because I remember seeing the postcard come in the mail about that and the QR code, and I'm
Yep.
like, wow, this is really impressive.
Yeah, yeah. So hopefully that's one way that we can give an opportunity for people to sign up to receive those updates. And not just, I know one of the messages we've received is not just things that have happened, but things that are going to happen so that they can choose to participate or attend if they want to.
Just one thing about that. We're hoping that the people that get those monthly blasts will tell their friends about, how did you know that? Well, I get this monthly thing from the school, right? We're hoping that will build
We'll increase
what's
it.
going on,
Yep.
so.
Yep, and we'll keep asking people and keep adding to
Are
it.
those messages that are going out to those folks, is that something, I feel like every message I get comes from Bright Arrow, so I'm wondering if I'm missing something that I could be signed up for too.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not
I
sure.
don't know if they're going to parents as well, but.
Nick sends them out, but I'm not sure. I can find out and get back to you. Yes.
And then I can't remember exactly what the postcard said, but in terms of what you just said, Fran, is there, in the actual newsletter, are there instructions on how to scan a QR code?
Oh,
I just want to double check because there's a large population of people who do not know how to scan a QR
Yep.
code.
We also put a link to, like the actual link, not just the QR code. I remember, and we added a phone contact if you didn't want to do either of those. So,
Perfect, thank you.
Yep. When we look at the individual questions, all except one of the questions were rated higher this year than last year. The one that was a little lower, there's a question about attending co-curricular activities and kind of your experience in it, and that one, not that it was significantly lower, it just wasn't higher than last year's. But overall, when you look at the scorecard measure that we use, from last year to this year, it went up pretty significantly. We're at, if you go to the next slide is the scorecard, we went from a 3.5 to a 8.5. That's the only question that's on a 10-point scale out of all of these surveys. So we went from an 8.5 to an 8.8 out of 10. And our target for the end of strategic plan is at 8.5 or better. So that's again, something really to celebrate. If you think that, a rating of an 8.8 out of 10 it's pretty satisfactory. So good, high rating overall from the community survey too.
And there's always a small percentage of people or a certain percentage of people who will never give a 10 because they say there's always something that could be improved upon.
Yep.
Is there some kind of follow-up or breakdown focus group to say like what would make you choose 10?
Yeah, we didn't do it this year, but we did do it last year, and we got some information about that, and then we looked at themes. One thing we do have is there were a lot of comments, too, about just the feedback, and so we can take a lot of the information from that, too.
Oh,
that
that's
gives us-
perfect, too.
Yeah.
As long as there's an avenue to relay that information.
Yep, yep.
Just one more thing to add to Lori in terms of numbers and the attempt to get more input. We did look back at the last referendum survey. And at that time, there was 1,089 community members that responded to that survey. So it begs the question, why so many there? How many of those were staff, parents, that kind of thing? But it was a lot more. Is it because it was an economic-related question? Don't know the answer to that, but it was a greater number. And a similar kind of thing, a postcard sent, asking them to fill out the survey, I think, right? Or was it the survey itself? you could either do it online or by paper, I think. But anyway, a much greater turnout for that particular request. So, again, all kudos to everyone for the efforts to do exactly what the goal asks us to do, and that is ensure access, representation, and voice of all our people. So, any questions in general?
Just one comment, if you remember, when we were at the convention in January, we listened to Joe Sanfilippo, and he said, people remember you for what they experienced. And the more positive experiences we can give community members and parents, the better it's going to be in the long run. We're teaching them what they need to know, and hopefully when we ask the question later on, they're going to say, this is an awesome school district because. So it's just a good way to get them involved.
All set. Great information. Any other questions for Lori or team?
I just want to thank her for holding hands with people who didn't know what they were doing this year. Thank you, Lori.
Great report, thanks. Okay, we'll move on to the 2025-26 Fund 80 Community Service Fund update. Janet.
When we adopt our original budget in October 27th of this year, there will be 3 separate components to that levy. We'll have the General Operations Fund levy, we'll have a Debt Service Fund levy, which is the amount that we levy to pay back all of the money that we've borrowed. And then the third levy is the Community Service levy. That levy is separate because the purpose of the levy is a little bit different in that it's serving those programs that are more community-facing and community-oriented. And in the attachment to the agenda this evening, you will see the different programs that we are recommending. They are the same programs that we had this past year. All of the, and in the description is just a little, what are each one of these programs about. For the dollar amount for each of these programs, they're all staff related. So for the Boys and Girls Club after school programming, that's for the staff that run the programs. They're not our employees. They are employed by the Boys and Girls Club. And the dollar amount is increasing for that this next year because our school will be done and we hope to be running a full-scale program this next year. School Resource Officer and Security is a program that we've had for a school resource officer, which is pretty self-explanatory, and then crossing guards to help our little ones and medium-sized ones get to school and cross the streets safely. So the reason for the increase, one thing I should have added with the School Resource Officer and Security, the reason that number has increased quite a bit is this year we paid 60%, and sometime back there was an agreement made that we would be eventually working our way up to 75% of the cost of the school resource officer. So we're working our way up toward that, and that's the reason for the increase. We wish it was at 50-50, but it's not. It's requested to be at 75%. So that's the reason for the increase there.
Is that amount then, Janet, the full 75%? Or you said we're still working our way up to 75%?
This amount is the 75% based on the estimate, which their contract, the city's on a calendar year basis. We're on a fiscal year July 1 through June 30th, so it crosses over. But yes, it is 75%. And so basically for the school year, because then in the summer, the officer is on patrol and doing the normal things that a police officer does.
Thank you for clarifying, Janet.
So this is just for information. The reason that I wanted to bring it is there's so many pieces to the budget, and if we bring them little by little, my hope is that it just helps you understand the pieces of the budget more easily without being overwhelming when we have it all together at once.
It's a great idea. It's always to segment something out and talk about it in its detail is, I think it makes it a lot easier to relate to a broad budget review and approval. So, anyone have any questions for Janet? Great, thank you. We'll move to item 16, which is a report from our policy committee related to a third grade promotion and retention for at-risk students. This is on for first reading.
Okay, so, thank you, Aaron. The 5411 is the third grade promotion and retention policy. It's something that we have to have as required by Act 20. It's supposed to be approved by the 1st of July for implementation in September 1 of 2026. So what we did was looked at a number of different policies that were submitted to us, one by WASB, one by DPI. We've looked at some other ones from other school districts, and this is the plan that we came up with. Aaron and our Mark and Eric and Tracy had a chance to take a look at it, and we'll ask them to comment. But what it does is it talks about what it takes to complete a personal reading plan, and what you can do in terms of options as a school district when someone does not complete their personal learning plan by the end of third grade. So I mean, we can entertain questions, or any one of the board members can feel free to speak.
I had a couple thoughts that I did share with Tracy and Eric. You know, and I think when Act 20 first came out, we were probably looking at this as kind of an overwhelming prospect. But, you know, as it ends up, I think that it allows a lot of flexibility in how we deal with things. So, you know, and I'm not sure that most of that we weren't already doing, just maybe more accountability. But I do like the wording changes in it. It gives it a much nicer tone. You know, saying things like the need for reading support and target growth in identifying reading skills. And we decided that between the words completed and exited, completed just sounded better.
I echo what Mark said as far as the way it's written. We're trying to be as positive as possible surrounding this, that we recognize that it's a very stressful situation for families who may need to be or have their students on a personal reading plan, but we have lots of different things that are being taken into consideration should they be in a situation where they're on a reading plan and they may not have completed their reading plan by the time it's time to move on to the third grade.
Just want to applaud the work done before it got to us. The problem with 3 people on a committee is now there's 3 voices that everyone has to hear from. Really good work till it got to our point. I think at the point where we're doing completed versus exited, that's just the perfect being the enemy of good enough, and it tells you how thoroughly it's prepped before it gets to us. So I appreciate all that hard work from the team here, and it's an easy policy to get through, I think. So thank you.
So that's for first reading.
That's for first reading. And
Thank you.
Anyone
Board
have any
members.
questions for the policy team? Could certainly ask them here or reach out to them separately between now and our next regular meeting. We now have an action item first of a few action items, and this one deals with donations.
A donation of cookies. Cookies valued at $5,600 from the Girl Scouts of Wisconsin Badgerland for K-5 students and staff. So hopefully everybody enjoyed the cookies. I know Todd did. He had a great big smile on his face.
I'll make a motion to approve the donation of cookies valued at approximately $5,600 from the Girl Scouts of Wisconsin Badgerland for K-5 students and staff.
Second.
Motion by Tracy, seconded by Brian to approve the donation from the Girl Scouts of Wisconsin Badgerland for $5,600 in cookies.
Just one comment. Don't you want to know how they distributed all those cookies?
I don't know, but I whispered over here and I said, did you get some of them cookies?
We had lots of different ways that we distributed them, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. We still have some. I gave some to Liz this morning as she was driving the van, so we're very appreciative of that donation and the timing, too.
I can tell you from personal experience, they do freeze well.
Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that donation is accepted with much appreciation. Thanks, Janet. Now we've already done 18. We'll move on to the personnel report. Are there any requests to remove items for separate consideration? No. Sonia?
Thank you. We have 2 resignation requests, 2 teachers that are moving on from Eagle Bluff, Isaac Saforigan, and then Talia Newhausen as our counselor. To note, Isaac has been with the district since 2014 and Talia with 2015. So quite a years of experience, and we wish them well. We are asking the board for a creation of a custodian position at the middle school. We had kind of shared this with the board earlier. This is the one where the cost will be split with the Boys and Crows Club. With the larger school building, we'll need more support there. And then 2 resignation notifications there, but I do want to point out the one from Audrey Martin. She was 1 year shy of being considered a retiree, 14 years as a pre-K para. She is does not want many people to know, so a big, quiet shout out to her, I guess.
I would move for approval of the personnel report as presented and detailed by Sonia.
Second.
Is it Bridget?
Yeah.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Bridget, to approve the personnel report as presented by Sonia and detailed in enclosure 19. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Sonia. Are there any requests to remove items from the consent agenda for separate consideration?
Seeing none, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Eric, to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And before I say we don't have any further business, this is, well, we're still going to keep him through the end of the month, but this will be Fran's last meeting with us in this capacity. I'm just going to offer a couple of words. Number one, thank you for, and we'll probably say something to Roger at the next meeting. But for coming back, spending these months with us, for exemplifying the definition of a servant leader, right? I think we're all better for your contributions. Over these last months, I personally learned a lot, and just want to, on behalf of, I think, a grateful district and community, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was an honor to be back.
It seems like we've done this before.
You need to see the picture that Bridget sent Roger and I, right?
I've shared it with a couple of people,
you?
but I got a really good picture. I should send it to Kristen so she can put it in a weekly update. But we were leaving graduation and I was talking with somebody and I said, I got to take a picture because Roger and Fran are just walking off into the sunset together and it's a nice view from the back. And I said, can you imagine the conversations going on? But they're probably thinking, are we done this time for real or
Until next time.
till next time? Yep.
It was good. It was great. Thank you for that.
And we have no further business tonight.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Tracy to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone, for your time tonight.